Hello, church family, and today we are in Matthew chapter 17. But before we get to the verses, I want you to think, it could be recently or way in the past, but one of the times that you were most surprised and kind of shocked. It could be from receiving a gift, it could be a visit from someone. For me, about a year and a half ago, my wife and one of my good friends worked out a surprise visit. And so I was going home from work. I walk into my house, and one of my best friends, Chad Smith, is sitting on my couch. And I'm like, what are you doing here? And he came to just spend a couple of days with me. But I was overjoyed to have my friend here and just being able to spend time with him in Huntsville and showing him my town and everything like that. It was awesome. But for this morning, I want us to take our most surprising moment and turn that dial up to 10. Because for what's going to happen to Peter, James, and John, it's going to blow all of our experiences out of the water. And so we see in verse 1, it says, after 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John, his brother, and led them up on a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. And so Jesus, in this moment, he takes a few of his followers, Peter, James, and John, and he takes the curtain of their reality, pulls it aside, and Jesus reveals his perfected and glorified self. His godly self. And I can't imagine what Peter and James and John are going through. If there was any unbelief, mistrust, or doubt, I would think an experience like this would wipe that away. I would think it would be gone. This would be a big moment. But also, it's a very life-changing moment from them. Because for his followers, yes, they've seen Jesus do miracles. But up to this point, Jesus has been almost fully human to him. Jesus got tired. Jesus had to eat. Jesus aged in front of them. Jesus probably had scars and rough hands from his past of working with his earthly father. Jesus' feet was probably dirty and worn just like theirs because Jesus went through life just as we do. When he was here on earth, he lived as a human. And then in verse 3, it says, behold, there appeared to them Moses and Elijah, and taken with them. See, in this, real quick, Moses represents the law, and Elijah represents the prophets, which is how the Lord spoke to the people before Jesus. And then kind of continuing on, short little point there, but in verse 4, we see our friend Peter say this. It says, and Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it is good that we are here. If you wish, I will make 3 tents here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. And here again, here's Peter being Peter, quickly speaking, saying something that maybe he hasn't thought through. And I know that we usually give Peter kind of a hard time, but if we're honest with ourselves, right, he's just like us. He's human. We do this often with the Lord and in our relationship with the Lord, trying to come up with a solution before waiting on the Lord. We try to take things into our own hands. But in verse 5, I love this, what the Father does. In verse 5, it says, he was still speaking, and behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them. And a voice from the cloud said, this is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. This is the Father proclaiming that Jesus is his Son. Jesus has lived up to the standard of the law. And this is who I'm going to use here forward. Jesus is who he says he is. And the Father is proclaiming that in front of these 3 men. The Father is telling these 3 men who would become big pillars in the church. They would write things that we still read today that is meaningful. And then we have verse 6. It says, and when the disciples heard this, they heard the Father, they fell on their faces and were terrified. But Jesus came to them and touched them, saying, rise and have no fear. But when they lifted up their eyes, they saw no one but Jesus only. Here's my encouragement today. Remember, Jesus is fully human and fully God at the same time. And the fully human part, that's what makes this relationship with Jesus so personal, so intimate, because he knows exactly what we've been through. But because of his death and resurrection, we one day are going to come face to face, just like Peter, James, and John here, with a perfected and glorified Christ.